and welcome to the 49ers First and 10 podcast. 10 minutes of the most up-to-date 49ers news, first thing in the morning. I'm your host, Brianna McDonald, and I'm joined by 49ers team reporter, Lindsay Polares. Yesterday, the San Francisco 49ers crossed a deadline that puts them closer to the start of the regular season, and that was with the setting of the team's initial 53-man roster. Today, we are going to break it down position by position to have all 53 players accounted for. Lindsay, let's start with the quarterbacks. Honestly, when we take ourselves back to the start of the offseason, it was unclear who would even start there. But now the full picture is painted. What's the team's lineup for QBs?
I think with Brock Purdy getting back to health over the course of training camp and then Sam Darnold being named the backup QB, this position group didn't really have a ton of room for surprises. So again, that group of three is Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, Brandon Allen for 2023. I think this is a position group of interest for this upcoming season just because of the new emergency quarterback rule in the NFL, obviously coming out of at least a little bit the situation that the 49ers faced in the NFC Championship game. So coming up in this season, teams will now be able to dress three quarterbacks without the third quarterback counting against the active roster limit. So that's a big deal for clubs across the league, and particularly the 49ers, who found themselves in a very, very unique situation at the tail end of last season. So that's the group you're looking at for 2023 as far as we know.
Now let's move on to running backs and the team's prized fullback who works with this group. This is a loaded backfield. It looks like we've got 5 players here who all have NFL experience. The youngest players in this position group are in their second year. Lindsay, which players will be carrying out San Francisco's run game this year?
I mean, it's hard not to look at this group and just immediately go to Christian McCaffrey. This is going to be, I hope, a special season for him, and it's got all the makings to be so because he finally gets to have or had that full offseason, that full preseason slate with the 49ers. As we all remember, he came to the team in week 7 as part of a trade that was pretty unexpected as far as our end. I wasn't expecting it, but definitely changed the course of the 49ers 2022 season, hoping he has a similar effect in 2023. He amassed 244 carries for over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. He had another 85 catches for 741 yards and another 5 touchdowns on the ground. So an undeniable impact for the 49ers and their ground game as well as their passing game.
Next is the 49ers wide receivers, and at first glance, this group looks just like it did last season, but what are some of the changes to this group, and should we expect any moves from this position?
Yeah, so it's exactly like you said, and I wrote it in my article. This looks almost like a complete copy and paste from last year, aside from one name on this list, which is wide receiver Ronnie Bell. He was a 7th round draft pick from 2023. He made the cut because of a really strong showing in training camp and the preseason. And he is also being looked at not just as his contributions in the passing game, but also as a possible return specialist for the 49ers, who are in need of one because Ray McCloud broke his wrist in that second or third week of training camp. It's all starting to blend together, but it was just prior to going to Las Vegas for joint practices. And then Danny Gray also suffered a shoulder injury. Still going to see what happens with them, but there is room to be more involved in the passing game. And again, because Ray McCloud was the return specialist for the 49ers in 2022, they need someone that will be a holdover, at least for that first portion of the season, until McCloud can get healthy. That is an opening for Ronnie Bell to get some extra playing time on special teams.
Now for the tight ends, the 49ers entered this season with their classic trio, plus a new addition. San Francisco is bringing on a total of 4 players this year. Last year, they stuck with 3. Lindsay, tell us about this extended version of the tight end group.
Yes, the tight end group is welcoming 5th round pick Braden Willis to the bunch. He's the only addition to this group, like you mentioned, and just a tremendous showing also through training camp and the preseason. Really just showed how he was growing over the course of these last, 6 to 8 weeks.
Finally, for the offense, we've got the offensive line, the biggest position group on the team, and a couple of new faces in the mix here. Who do we have lining up, and which players are going to serve as key pieces for depth?
Yeah, so Colton McKivitz is not a new member to the active roster, the 53-man roster. However, he is going to be taking on a bigger role in 2023. He has been named the starting right tackle. He's going to be replacing the role previously filled by Mike McGlinchey, who left in free agency to the Denver Broncos. And he's had an unconventional journey with the 49ers. It's had its ups and downs, but he's worked his way to that starting job. And he's really looking forward to being that other fifth piece to the offensive line. And then we've also got free agent additions Matt Pryor and John Feliciano. They're being looked at as really key depth pieces across the offensive line. And then we also have third year pro Jalen Moore. He has been serving as the primary backup for all pro left tackle Trent Williams for a lot of those preseason games. So definitely three names to keep an eye on as we head into 2023.
Now, moving on to the defense, we're starting up front with the D line. We've got a diverse group of guys here. I recognize our leaders of the group who have a ton of experience. There's also some new players coming in. Lindsay, tell us about this year's defensive line that the 49ers leadership have been crafting over the offseason.
Yeah, headed into the offseason, one of the goals of the decision makers on the 49ers was to create a revamped defensive line. And we've heard referenced all over the course of the offseason that 2019 was kind of the standard for that D line, and they wanted to get back to that level of excellence. So, in order to do that, you have to bring in the big guns. That was, of course, Javon Hargrave. Not a surprise to be on this 53-man roster, but definitely somebody worth highlighting. He started all 17 games with the Eagles last season, had 60 tackles, a career high 11 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 passes defensed, and a forced fumble. He also started all 3 of their postseason games and had 9 tackles, a sack, and 1 pass defense. And so just a tremendous addition to that defensive line. Another player I did want to highlight is Kalia Davis, who was a draft pick from 2022. He spent most of last season on the NFI list because of an ACL injury that he suffered during his college days. We saw him return to practice at the end of last season, and then he really worked his way up to just full playing time over the course of training camp. So definitely looking forward to seeing him on the field.
Next up is the 49ers linebackers, and over the course of training camp, there's been some competition for that third linebacker spot with former Niner Azeez Al-Shaair leaving to the Tennessee Titans. So who all made the cut for this initial linebacker group?
Yeah, so of course, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are your staples. I mean, really just the centerpieces of that 49ers defense, but we also have Oren Burks, Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, D. Winters, and Jalen Graham. Those last 2 are rookie draft picks. I think someone worth highlighting here is Oren Burks. Again, not a surprise to be on the 53-man roster, but he was somebody that was being looked at very strongly for that third starting linebacker spot. He very well may be able to fit in by week 1, but it's really just about waiting to see if he's going to be ready to come back from a PCL strain that he suffered in joint practice against the Las Vegas Raiders. They're hoping he'll be ready for week 1, so stay tuned because we're really not that far out. And again, just want to give a little bit of spotlight to our 2 rookies, D. Winters and Jalen Graham. They were both late round picks of that 2023 NFL draft, and both have earned a spot on this 53-man roster.
Now, looking at the defensive secondary, let's dive into our cornerbacks. Who's headlining this group, and are there any new names the faithful should look out for?
Yeah, so obviously headliner of this group would be Charvarius Ward. He was really cornerback 1 through all of the 2022 season. He is entering his second year with the 49ers, but there is a veteran newcomer to this group, and that's Isaiah Oliver. He signed with the 49ers in free agencies coming from the Atlanta Falcon. Wait, sorry. Did he come? Yes, he did. Okay, sorry. So the headliner of this group is Charvarius Ward. He was cornerback 1 through all of the 2022 season. He is entering year 2 with the 49ers, and he's actually going to be joined by a veteran newcomer, and I'm talking about Isaiah Oliver. He spent his previous 5 seasons with the Atlanta Falcons. He's one of the guys that's being looked at for that starting nickelback position, but we've seen a lot of rotation there, and we've seen Diamador Lenore, Ambry Thomas, and Sam Womack kind of cycling through to see what the best configuration of cornerbacks is for that San Francisco defense. And did want to give a little bit of shine to Lenore. He's entering his 3rd year with San Francisco, and he was really that second outside corner for the 49ers for a lot of 2022. And we really saw him hit his stride during that 3-game postseason run. He had two of his 3 interceptions of 2022 come in that playoff run. So looking forward to seeing him in year 3.
Our last group of the defense are the 49ers safeties. The faithful should expect some big things from this group under defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. Lindsay, who do we have lined up here?
So we've got Talanoa Hufanga, Tashawn Gibson Sr., George Odom, and Jair Brown. I think everyone's happy to see the dynamic duo of Talanoa Hufanga and Tashawn Gibson Sr. back together for another season. We heard over the offseason that Gibson Sr. was thinking about retiring, but instead opted to come back. They've become best friends on and off the field, and they're just super fun to watch. Gibson Sr. is entering his 12th NFL season. And he's a guy that joined in late August of last year, spent some time on the practice squad, and now has cemented himself as one of the 49ers starting safeties. So everyone's super happy to see him back. And then Jair Brown is a rookie 3rd-round draft pick, the highest of the 49ers draft picks from 2023. He has earned a spot on the 49ers 53-man roster.
Last but certainly not least are the team's specialists. It's the same group the faithful should expect with a new kicker. But Lindsay, what's the latest news surrounding this position group?
Yeah, so Jake Moody is really the newcomer to this group, also a 3rd-round draft pick from 2023. His starting time for this 2023 season is a little bit unclear right now. He suffered a right quad strain last week prior to that Chargers game. The expectation is that he will not be ready for week 1. So head coach Kyle Shanahan said the team is exploring other options to see who can fill the gap as the team heads very quickly into week 1.
All right, that makes up the 49ers official initial 53-man roster for the 2023 season. Be on the lookout for any roster moves that come to 49ers.com, as a few typically follow this announcement, such as the team's practice squad. But that will do it for today. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining me in this roster breakdown. Don't forget to follow First and 10 on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to turn on the notifications so you're in the know when we post any breaking news updates. And thank you, Faithful, for tuning in.